Welcome back to Bible study, and we are continuing in our series with the readings for what we had that weekend in worship, and what we just had this past weekend in worship was the All Saints. So these are the Bible readings for All Saints Sunday, and that is Daniel 7, chapter 7, verse 1 through 3 and 15 through 18, and Psalm 149, and Ephesians chapter 1, 11 through 23, and Luke chapter 6, 21 through 31. And before we get into the actual Bible passages, I'd like to begin with our prayer. So this is a prayer that's for All Saints Sunday. Let us pray. Almighty God, you have knit your people together in one communion in the mystical body of your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Grant us grace to follow your blessed saints in lives of faith and commitment, and to know the inexpressible joys you have prepared for those who love you, through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen.
The theme is the All Saints, remembering the saints, I guess you could say. And we'll start with Daniel. Sometimes I wonder about, this is a very thematic week. And so every scripture that was chosen was to be related to saints, or who are the saints, or the saints before us, that sort of thing. And I think the reason that the Daniel passage gets mentioned is that at one point it makes reference the holy ones of the Most High. So I think because it has that phrase in it, it's not, I don't think the Old Testament even has in Hebrew a word that we would say call saints. The word we know as saints is more from the Greek language, more from the New Testament. But there is this phrase in the reading in Daniel, the holy ones of the Most High. So I think they take that as, that's also, you could say that's talking about the saints. That's all of the believers. Of course, this is still Old Testament. At that point, the holy ones of the Most High were only the Jews at that point. But I think we can end up including ourselves. But before we get into the Bible reading, and some of you were in worship this weekend, and you heard our guest pastor, Pastor Matt Metavelis.
What's his name?
Pastor Matthew, full name, Pastor Matthew Metavelis. Metavelis, yeah. And he often is called Pastor Matt. And his two delightful children. And his delightful children who are with him. Noah kept me chuckling because Noah, I think, is maybe about 6. I'm guessing. He's 5? 5. He's 5. Okay. And he reminded me so much of our son Mark when Mark was young, probably maybe just a little older. And if Pastor Dave especially would ask a question in the church service, just like Pastor Matt was doing, Mark's hand would go up. And then Pastor Dave would be kind of like, should I call on him? And he usually had something that was a little bit funny to share. And I noticed, to me, Noah was also kind of similar vein as what Mark would used to do. So it was fun to see Noah interacting and bringing. So the question, though, which he said, and I thought this is good for us too, is who are the saints, or what does it take? What do you think it takes to be a saint? Let's just start out. If you were gonna. Let's just name some saints. Who are some saints? Let's start with who are some of the officially named ones. Who would you think of?
Teresa, Mary.
Saint Mary.
Saint Peter.
Saint Peter.
Patrick.
Saint Patrick. Yeah, there's a lot of them, right? And I didn't bring it with me, but we have our hymnal, in our Lutheran Book of Worship, or I think now it's called ELW. At any rate, it has, if you look in the front end, it'll actually tell days for saints. And my birthday is October 18th, happens to be St. Luke's That's St. Luke's Day. So, so I've always been aware of that. That's one that I know. But as Lutherans, we don't probably honor the saints in the same manner that the Catholics do, but we still recognize that I think some people have been chosen by God to serve in a very special way. And so our list of saints is not, hugely long, but there are those, they are there. And it can be interesting to learn a little bit of their life story sometimes. Like, why is it? Well, Luke is kind of an obvious one because the Gospel of Luke and everything, but it's some of the other stories can be kind of interesting, like how they got, why they're saints. But then I thought Pastor Matt had another interesting question though. What do you think is a part of the job description of being a saint? So what would you say? What's on the resume? What does you have to have on your resume if you're going to be a saint?
Your belief in Christ.
Believing in Christ, yeah.
Uncompromising love.
Uncompromising love. I like that. I like that.
What was that?
Uncompromising love that most of us don't have.
Yeah, which we sometimes fall behind on that. Yeah. I love that I love these kind of responses because I think to me, my assumption is if you talk to people in general, they're going to say things like, extremely holy, extremely moral, I don't know, but I think you're more closer to what I think the Bible is trying to help us understand is that it's about being connected to Christ, and it's about letting God's love flow through us. That's really what about sainthood is about. I liked there's a little story, and I'm not going to pick up the camera and shift it, but you can see some stained glass behind. There's another stained glass in the room that's much larger, but there's a story about a father and his little girl gone into one of these big kind of more traditional great cathedral types, and it had these big elaborate stained glass, and there would be like a St. Peter, a St. Paul, a St. Luke, a St. Mary, different ones depicted in the stained glass. And so the father had said to her, "Do you know who the saints are?" And her response was, "They're the ones the light shines through." And I always thought, I like that as an answer as well. The ones the light shines through. So God's light shines through. And so this is what we're remembering, and we're remembering those who have gone before us, the saints before us. But we're part of the saints. That's the thing. It's not just the saints who've gone to heaven, but it's the saints are continuing and still here on earth, So the reading from Daniel is I kind of get a kick out of the book of Daniel. It's a kind of literature that is a little odd or different to people. I don't know. There is a kind of more current literature that is still very popular for a lot of people. There's things like it's called dystopian. I never got into this a lot, but there's movies and there's books, things like The Hunger Games. I don't know if you've heard of that movie series.
I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean it's not my cup of tea. But what it's the thing is, there is some very current, actually very popular. I mean, these became big movie series. The books sold, very lots of books, and so it's. But there's still hope in there. So even though it's a picture of a society or a time where things are really bad in many, many ways, I think the ultimate arc of it is that there's still hope. There's still going to be good. You stand up to the empire. You stand up to the evildoers. And so the book of Daniel was written in the past, obviously, but it was also taking on that idea about an empire, and it was during it mentions something, and we'll start reading that, and so we're in chapter 7, just Daniel chapter 7, and it starts just verses 1 through 3. We'll just start with that, but we're going to touch on then it skips, but we're going to look at some of the verses that are between the ones that don't show up in the bulletin. We're going to look at a few of those, some of that too. But I'm going to ask if, John, if you want to start Daniel chapter 7 and verse 1 through 3.
Okay,
Chapter 7.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions in his head on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and the four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other.
Okay, thanks. So this is Daniel and some companions. Yet the way the book is presented is that they're young men who are from probably good families in Israel when the Babylonians take over and deport or take into exile a whole bunch of people. Daniel is with that.
After Ezekiel.
Yeah, the book of Daniel will be after Ezekiel, right? Yeah. So you're getting caught up. And so, yeah, it's but it has this kind of picture language. Now, some of the stories in Daniel are probably the more also very memorable. Like there's the Daniel in the lion's den, right? That a lot of times you've learned in Sunday school. There's Daniel and his companions that are thrown into a fiery furnace, but an angel is with them. So, God protects them. God is with them. But then there's another portion of it that talks these very extreme imagery kind of things. So it's another way, though, of talking about empires. And at the time when this is understood to actually relate to, the actual time period, is not the time of the Babylonians, but later. It was where it was called the Seleucid, I hope I'm saying that right, empire. And the king at the time that was of that one was Antiochus Epiphanes. And I just think it's a fun name to say, Antiochus Epiphanes. And he was just a bad guy. And he reigned from 175 to 164 BC. So this is still before Christ. And one of the things that he did, which was so offensive, is he was refusing to allow the Jews to follow the Torah, to do the practices that they knew meant that they were faithful Jews. And then the real, like the height of offensiveness was he put images of Zeus, an idol, a god, a foreign god, into the temple in Jerusalem. And he also had pigs sacrificed, which, pigs are, the Jews don't touch pork. They don't, they would never have pigs as sacrifice, So again, he was hugely offensive. So we're going to get to that particular, but it mentions four beasts, right? And the four beasts are four empires, and it's the Medes, Babylonians, the Medes, the Persians, and then the Greeks. So that's the sequence. All right. So these beasts represent these empires, and they're scary and they're vicious in different ways, very powerful. But there's an underlying message is to say, yeah, there's these things in life that are extremely powerful, and we could talk about these being empires, but you might think about it as what is something that is very powerful, that is a beast to humans in life experience would be death, or it could be the power of sin. So even though I think we should understand this is talking a lot about empires. I think we can also see meaning as to other things, as representing other things. All right, so it continues. So we're moving in chapter 7 to verse. I'm just going to do 4 through 6. We don't have to go to every little detail, but let's just do 4 through 6. And I don't know, Barb, do you feel like reading? If you're comfortable, I'm moving the phone closer to you so that they can probably hear better. Okay. So are you okay to read?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay, go ahead.
The first was like a lion, and it had the wings of an eagle. I watched until its wings were torn off, and it was lifted from the ground so that it stood on 2 feet like a man, and the heart of a man was given to it. And there before me was a second beast, which looked like a bear. It was raised up on one of its sides, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, "Get up and eat your fill of flesh."
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, we'll stop there. It goes on. It goes into more details of the other beasts. The end of that verse. Yeah. So Johnny, that's a good connection. There's similar type language in some in Ezekiel and Revelation. Picks up off of these same kind of metaphors. But you're right. It gets carried over. And again, it's in general the category is called apocalyptic, and it's when they're very powerless. They're these great empires. They've been conquered, and like in Revelation, the book of Revelation is the Roman Empire, and it's the early Christians, and they're pretty much powerless against the Roman Empire. But through all of this horrendous, challenging, scary, powerful things, God is still in control. And that's kind of that's where it leads to. So it goes through all this more, vivid, all these vivid, very imaginative ways of describing. But then it kind of comes, I'm going to skip down to verse 8. So we're still Daniel chapter 7. I'm going to skip down to verse 8, which is after the 4th beast, okay? It's after that. So Daniel says in verse 8, and we'll just do, I think it's just verse 8. I was considering the horn when another horn appeared, a little one coming up among them to make room for it. 3 of the earlier horns were plucked up by the roots. There were eyes like human eyes in this horn, and a mouth speaking arrogantly. Okay, it's understood or believed that last little upstart and the one who is displacing others and the one who is speaking arrogantly, that represents Epiphanes, Antiochus Epiphanes. So in their own day, they would understand that kind of a reference of who that was. And it would have been a bit of a poking fun. But the language and the imagery is so unusual that if your enemy reads it, they're just going to be like, this is just some fantastic, mythical, funny, weird story. They won't understand that you're actually talking about your enemies in a way that they won't get it. I always remember is we had a classmate when we were in seminary. She was a woman from South Africa, and she was African. She was black skinned, and she could not be allowed to be ordained because blacks were not given rights at that time. They were in
Africa.
Yeah, it was in South Africa.
Okay.
They still had apartheid. There was still a great deal of oppression. So she helped me understand the need to speak in code, to be able to communicate to your own people, but that if the enemy is there, the police or whoever was trying to do something to you, like they wouldn't understand. And so hearing her talk about it from that real life experience really gave me more perspective of what was going on in a different time, but still that same kind of situation, having to deal with a very powerful enemy. Okay, thank you. We're going to skip to the rest of the part that was read in the church service. So we're now going to verse 15 through 18. And so, I'm sorry. You know what? Backing up, I think we need to start with verse 13. So we're in still Daniel chapter 7, and we're going to be at verse 13. Yeah, so down to Daniel chapter 7, verse 13 through 14. I want to add those verses.
This is 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As for me, Daniel. Yeah.
Yeah, but I want to start with verse 13. Is that?
As for me, Daniel, my spirit was troubled within me, and the visions of my head terrified me. I approached one of the attendants to ask him the truth concerning all this. So he said that he would disclose to me the interpretation of the matter. As for the 4 great beasts, 4 kings shall arise out of the earth. I continue.
Yeah, one more verse.
But the holy ones of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever.
Yeah. So here they are, even in the midst of the great difficulty that they're facing, living under this empire enemies, is the message of, but God is with you, and God is going to deliver you. And right before this, it also mentioned there's a phrase, the Son of Man, and we understand that to mean Jesus Christ. And so this particular version says, I saw one like a human being coming with the clouds of heaven, and he came to the Ancient One and was presented before him. To him was given dominion and glory and kingship, that all peoples, nation, language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not pass away, and his kingship is one that shall never be destroyed. And in our perspective, that we see that as talking about Jesus Christ. So again, even though these other things seem to have so much power, Jesus is above it all. Jesus is more than all of it. And then we are included because the holy ones of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. And I think that's for all the saints, that it's not just who from their labors rest. I mean, I think it talks about after we die, that, the kingdom's ours forever. What is it we say with the 23rd Psalm? And I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever, right? So belonging to God, we share in that. We share being part of God's kingdom. We belong to that. And I think that's also part of that belonging is part of being saints, too.
In
my
New King James Version, the verse
Where are you,
13, it's 13, but it says, I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is where the Son of Man statement comes in. Yeah.
King James Version.
In the King James and some other versions, it uses the wording Son of Man particularly. Mine happens to go really very literally a human being, but that's fine. I like the Son of Man because then that lets us think more about Jesus, especially, But all right, well, so we're going to move on from Daniel to the Gospel. So turning to Luke chapter 6. And so we're Luke chapter 6 and beginning verse 20. All right, and so, Luke chapter 6 and verse 20. And I think it's, we're in the year of Luke, so this is Luke's version of what's in Luke, it's called Sermon on the Plain. In Matthew's gospel, it's called Sermon on the Mount. But they cover a lot of the same message of Jesus, words of Jesus. So, yeah, so it's chapter 6, but it's got to go down a little bit to get to verse 20. Yeah, so it's 20 through 31. There's a lot in the whole message. I mean, there's definitely a lot more, but this is, okay, so in Matthew's version, we call it the Beatitudes. And so this is Luke's version of what we know as the Beatitudes, right?
Yes.
All right. So, so Jesus is preaching, his disciples and a whole lot more people, actually, the way it's described. And Jesus is on a level space, which I find, I don't know if we're supposed to put too much symbolism in it, but to me, maybe it's that reminder that Jesus came to be among us. You know, that he came to be fully human. He became one of us. So at the moment, he's standing on the same level as everybody.
He's usually on a mountain.
But in Matthew, he's on a mountain. So I'm not sure. Maybe Luke wanted to emphasize the humanity of Jesus. I'm not sure. That's total kind of a guess on my part. A lot of people came to him also, though, for healing, which he did. He had healed a whole lot of people. But then he starts to teach. Now he's teaching them, preaching or teaching, I guess. So let's see, John, will you read again? And if you'll we'll start with the blesseds, and that's 20 and 21. That's as much as there is in this version. So just chapter 6, 20 and 21. The two, just those blessed verses. Oh, I'm sorry, it's one more. Go through 20 through 23.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Starting with 20.
Yeah.
Then he lifted up his eyes toward his disciples and said, "Blessed are you poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you shall be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed are you when men hate you, and when they exclude you, and revile you, and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, for indeed your reward is great in heaven. For in like manner their fathers did to the prophets."
So I think that's I think this is a good message, you know. This is who, but the who is blessed. The part about who is blessed, in some ways, we're so used to hearing this, but is it a little surprising? I mean, would you normally be looking around saying, "Oh, that person's poor. Oh, they're blessed"?
No, most of this is opposite of what you think.
Yeah, it does. It goes opposite of what, in general, you would say, "Oh, that person's blessed," and that's Luke's gospel. It's in the others too, for sure, because I think in Matthew it's got similar message, similar words. But Luke definitely likes to take that kind of sense of reversal, like God is shifting perspective, shifting the way we would look or understand who matters in God's eyes. You know, who does God really care about? And we got in Luke's gospel, we got some of that in the Magnificat, where that talks about God lifting up the lowly, putting down the powerful, and then Jesus speaking from Isaiah in his first message in the synagogue, reading Isaiah, says, "The Lord has called me to proclaim good news to the poor, release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to set free the oppressed." I mean, you know, so it's again, it's that reversal kind of idea.
Do you think, at least it's been my experience, that when people are down on their luck, have some tragedy, they tend to turn more to God than things
Yes.
are going great.
Oh, I think
You
so.
know, I think there is something in that it's easier to be looking to God when life is more difficult, when things are kind of easygoing and, you know, you don't necessarily be like, I mean, it'd be a good time to be saying, thank you, God, but it'll be a little too easy perhaps to just kind of be like, just keep cruising and not really think about how God was helped you, right? But the people who are hungry or poor, or I mean, in my own life, I think, you know, if someone I love or myself has illness, I'm praying because, you know, God, please help heal, you know, this person. And so I think we do when we have the need. I think we are a bit more inclined to turn to God in prayer.
And blessed are you who turn to God.
Yeah, and that's a good thing, and that's a good thing. So maybe part of this is in those types of situations, you are maybe more aware of how much you rely on God, how much you need God. So there is that raised awareness in its own way is part of a blessing.
And he's saying in this, and blessed are them because they're doing this. You should be doing this.
And those with addictions, you know, they go through that 12-step program, whatever. But they say it's easier that's when they turn around. If they hit bottom, that's when they ask for help.
I think that's
Sometimes it just takes that
Yeah.
to get them to,
that
or
kind of
anyone.
wake up moment, kind of. Yeah. So there is something. I think, you know, it's. I mean, these passages I could ponder and ponder and ponder. I love the thought too, though, that it points out our need for God, but I also think other passages remind us that God never expects or wants us to stay there. You know, God is not saying, "Hey, let me make that person poor, so they'll now have to turn to me." I think life puts enough of those situations before us anyway. But God can use the situation to possibly, like you say, that person with the addiction hits that bottom to the very bottom, and that's when they, you know, like, I need help. God, help me.
It takes
So-
that for some people.
Yeah. I like the again, everyone here, you can say God cares for in a special way. And I mean, who Jesus related to, who Jesus hung out with, it's very clear that God cares. And so being poor, being hungry, sorrowing, weeping, I like the phrase, they say, hate you. I think the ones who exclude you, I kind of key into that phrase because there can be people who are kind of outcasts in society and who are pushed to the margins. And yet again, those are the ones that God cares about. And knowing that this God cares that much, it's like, well, we are to care also, you know. That's part of how we're supposed to see and how we're supposed to care. You could say living out being saints, meaning belonging to God, means seeing the way God sees. All right, so those are the blessings. Then there's the part of the woes. So the difference, I think, with Matthew has a lot more of the blessings. The blessed are the peacemakers. You know, there are more of those phrases. Luke jumps us right into the woe section. It's like, thanks a lot, Luke, but here we are. So I'll read the woe portion. So this is verse 24 through 26. I'm just looking here. Are you there?
Yes.
Hello?
Okay, I'm just double checking. Okay, good. I just want to make sure. Okay, so we're going to read Luke 24 6:24 through 26. So these are the woes. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your consolation. Woe to you who are full now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who are laughing now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all speak well of you, for that is what their ancestors did to the false prophets. So I noticed the being turned from or defamed is good, because that's what ancestors did to the prophets, who are the good guys, the real prophets. But if everybody loves you, speaks well of you, fawns about you, fawns over you, that's not good, because that's how people treated the false prophets, the ones who were not telling God's message. So it's like, watch out for too much flattery. It's like you might. Okay, just like is it surprising? Just like it was a little kind of surprising, like, oh, these are the people who are blessed. So these are the people. Woe, by the way, does not mean cursed. Because it's hard not to make that thought in your head, because we see blessings and curses. Like we think blessings and curses being like the opposites. Woe is more like, look out, be careful. It's like more like a warning, kind of like you could be heading the wrong way, like the sign, watch out for falling rocks. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that woe is not, he's not saying these people are cursed, but he's like saying they're kind of in danger. So why would you say these folks might be in danger?
Because I think part of it is that they're taking God for granted. They're okay. My ego, I'm great. I got plenty to eat. I'm rich. I don't need to worry about anybody else. It's me.
Yeah.
It's all me.
It's all me. It's all. And I think there's a tendency to think that, well, I earned this, right? I did this. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with having food or wealth or anything, but I think if we be too possessive about it, that's where the danger is. And one of the things that sticks out for me from Genesis chapter 12, when God called Abraham and gave him special blessings, part of that was, the message was, you are blessed to be a blessing. And I think so maybe the danger too is if you're rich or you're full of food or you're all happy-go-lucky, but you might not be blessing others. You might not be generous in sharing of the blessing that you have.
You're accumulating it, but you're not.
But you're not passing it on or helping share it. Yeah. So I think those are some of the woe or the dangerous potential problems. All right. So now Jesus continues, and he talks about guidance, I guess. So this is verse 27 through 31. Johnny?
Yes.
I'm gonna ask you if you would read that portion.
Who is that?
This is
Johnny.
starting with what I say.
So Luke 6:27 through 31.
Yeah, I'm reading from the bulletin, so it doesn't have numbers.
Okay.
Does it start with what I say?
Oh yes, starts with "But I say to you."
But I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do unto others as you would have them do to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was clear. Very
Yeah,
clear.
we could hear well. Thank you, Johnny. Um, so the idea of maybe part of the reason this is included for All Saints is, again, as ones who belong to God. And again, we're saints because of what Jesus has done for us, not because we were, extra holy or extra good or,
We can't earn it ourselves.
yeah, we don't earn it, but we are called. The word saint or holy means set apart. That's part of being holy means you are set apart, and we are set apart for God. And as ones who are set apart for God, Jesus is saying we live this way. This is who you are, right? So, but what he describes there is not super easy. Right? It kind of goes again. It kind of pushes against typical human preferences or whatever behavior.
If somebody takes your coat, you want it back.
I would agree. I want my coat back.
I don't think they say you would take off your shirt and give that to them too.
Yeah.
I think when Jesus comes again, maybe, because that would imply that everyone is following, everyone.
Everyone's in
is
the
playing
same.
with the same rules.
Yeah.
There may be people who can do all this, and maybe they're the ones we recognize as possibly being the saints.
Yeah, yeah. There are people who even in this life, earthly life, have a level, I will say true, a level of peacemaking or loving another that is sort of beyond most of us,
The problem is, as long as, in my opinion,
Yeah.
as long as you have someone out on the street assaulting somebody, that's a human.
Yeah.
And therefore, you will also have countries assaulting other countries.
If humans will assault a human, countries will assault countries. Yeah. So the thing about this is I think we do have to wrestle with it. I think some people feel they can embrace it like very fully, right? But I think we have to find the right balance. I don't want to ever say we just give up on it or throw it out like, oh, well, that's unrealistic. Don't listen to this. I think Jesus is setting the right ideal before us, the way, this would be God's way, and we should, as much as we could, live in God's way. But I also understand that, I mean, in the case of domestic abuse, I would not want someone to twist this around and make it sound like that the person, usually the woman who's being abused, should just turn the other cheek. I mean, that's enabling. That's allowing the abuser to continue that sinful behavior. So, so I think you have to put it in the right perspective, that there might be the right occasion where the turning the other cheek is definitely the right thing to do, but not just blanket in every situation of life.
Maybe he's saying initially you do that.
Yeah.
Giving
an opportunity.
Giving an opportunity for counseling, give it a chance. Don't just immediately.
A chance for redemption, a chance for
But
change.
also you have to recognize that at some point,
Yeah.
there's evil in the world, and turning the other cheek continuously to evil isn't.
So it's a ongoing. I mean, there's those who brought change, big change. Martin Luther King Jr., peaceful,
Gandhi,
right?
Yeah.
Gandhi. So, I mean, I think there are those who held up quite a high, like they did it, But then one of my saints that Christians I highly respect, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was in Germany under the Nazis, he called himself a guilty martyr because he used the word guilty because he did work with people who did actively work to get rid of Hitler. I mean, literally assassinate him. So, he wanted to be the full peaceful Christian, but in his struggle of living faithfully, he came around to, but that he felt they had to stop Hitler. So I mean, I think we have a range of living it out.
Yeah. Generally, they became martyrs because they were assassinated, or,
Yeah.
because they were moving in the right direction,
Yeah.
but people weren't having it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, I love this message. I absolutely always want to take it to heart, but I also understand that we have to kind of keep real life balance in there. And the final, one of the final words, I mean, this goes on, but I think an end to this section, the last is verse 36. So in Luke 6, verse 36. So if you just keep going down just a little further to verse 36, I think this is a key verse always too, to try to keep close to us. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. And so we have received that mercy. And so as much as we are to, again, reflect that to others. So anyway, I thank you, saints, that we could gather today and know that the Holy Spirit is always in us and working in us and always continually shaping us as saints who belong to Christ.
Well, even Christ got angry.
There were moments he expressed
at least
anger.
Once that we know
Yeah.
of. So,
the ones that's definitely recorded.
He wasn't going to put up with those money changers.
No
and
money,
that.
yeah.
And that was his human part.
Yeah.
Well, and it was, I think, so again, I think that's such a good example though, because it could be saying at moments there can be the right anger, using the right moment. The anger can be okay at the right moment, but as humans, we'd love to get there a whole lot faster most of the time. Like, oh, this is the right moment, and I think Jesus showed a whole lot more restraint. So I think we have to. But I appreciate that we know that Jesus did do that. So again, depends on the situation, perhaps. So. Well, I think we're going to need to go ahead and wrap up, but we'll do what we usually do. We'll close with our Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.